The most interesting part of all this is the amount of people that wanted Liston dead. There is a list of 6 suspects that have been questioned, and they all have the motive. We'll go through the suspects list, and then what we'll do is we'll probably be better off if we give our thoughts at the end of it. The fact that 6 suspects that wanted Liston dead is crazy, and it's crazy that he would have been hated by 6 people that much to want him dead. He blatantly was injected with heroin. I mean, that's my first initial thought. Moving on to suspects then. So the most obvious suspects of the murder of Sonny Liston, when you look back on his life, are, so we're going to begin with a guy that we spoke about earlier, which was Earl Cage. Now, this was obviously the beautician by day and dealer by night. And after Cage's home was raided by the DEA and Las Vegas police, Cage apparently put out a contract to Sonny Liston's life because he was the only one not to get arrested. He felt he was a snitch, and that gave him motive. So I think that's a good one to start with, Earl Cage, and it does definitely give him motive. The other guy, which is also the second suspect, is Robert Chudnik, who was the famous jazz trumpet player known as Red Rodney. Now, Red Rodney felt that Liston had become a liability and untrustworthy following the raid of Earl Cage's house, along with the altercation Liston had with his son Mark. Both would have their reasons for wanting him out of the picture. So 2 very interesting suspects, and 2 that would probably be high on the list.
Now, another possible suspect on this list is Mo Dalitz. He was an American gangster, businessman and casino owner, a major figure who'd shaped Las Vegas in the 20th century. He was often referred to as Mr. Las Vegas. After bootlegging during the Prohibition, he turned his attention to gambling and operated illegal but protected casinos. He invested in the Desert Inn, but when the original builder of the resort, Wilbur Clark, ran out of money, Dalitz and the Cleveland Mayfield Road Gang, aka the Cleveland crime family, bailed him out. Clark remained the public face and the frontman of the resort. Dalitz quietly remained in the background as the real owner. Just before Liston's death, he apparently made a fist behind Dalitz's back. When he saw Liston do this, he responded by saying, "If you do hit me, then you better make sure you kill me. Otherwise, I will make one phone call and you will be dead in 24 hours. I mean, it's a little far-fetched to suspect Dalitz, but you don't really take these type of guys for idiots. And I'm pretty sure that there would have been plenty of other victims that have done much less than what Sonny Liston did.
Oh, there would have been a few, especially to an American gangster. There would have been people that would have died for far less than that. So it is a long shot, and one that probably I wouldn't necessarily say is the top of the list, but definitely worth mentioning. And why would fit the description of being a suspect. And the other one that I've got here is Irvine Ash Resnick. And Irvine Ash Resnick was the Thunderbird Hotel and Casino operator in Las Vegas, which related to the New York mob. Now, Resnick was native of Brooklyn and actually played ball at the NYU in the 1950s. He was believed to have been involved in a point-shaving scandal at the school, but was never officially found guilty of anything. While growing up in New York City, Resnick made connections with the mafia. Resnick was rumoured to be tight with Charlie the Blade Torine, an affiliate of the Giovesi Luciano family, and very interestingly, an international heroin trafficker. Resnick had other ties in the sports world, most notably with basketball legend Wilt Chamberlain. Chamberlain was a regular guest with Resnick at Caesars Palace back in 1968-69 season when Chamberlain performed Wally. I mean, again, a bit far-fetched, but Resnick was a guy that had connections in terms of international heroin trafficking. So whether he would have been involved, maybe not a suspect, but he could have, and ties and affiliates with some of the top gangster families around at the time.
It's also been alleged that, Resnick actually put a contract out on Liston's life, and this allegation actually came from a Las Vegas police informant known as Erwin Peters, aka P. Peters, in 1982. He gave evidence to the police saying that Resnick's contract was accepted and was actually carried out by Larry Gandy. Now, Gandy was a legendary undercover Las Vegas cop that went bent. He was famously responsible for arresting drug dealers on the west side of Vegas. Many dealers were always wary of being stung by undercover cops, so they would only deal to someone if they shoot up in front of them. What Gandhi would do is somehow he'd actually switch the heroin of rock for maple syrup and shoot maple syrup into his veins instead, to make them believe they actually had a legitimate junkie on their hands, which resulted in him capturing many criminals. Now, due to his deep involvement undercover, he became hooked on cocaine and started organising robberies with his informant, P. Peters. By this point, Gandhi was off the force and working with Peters, but something happened between them and they fell out, resulting in Peters testifying against Gandhi about their robberies and his apparent involvement in Liston's death. A sting operation was arranged after Peters' statement to catch Gandhi red-handed in the middle of a robbery, which resulted in his arrest, but only for the robberies, as the Liston allegation was actually never investigated.
Very interesting, and Peters feared for his life when Gandhi found out he had ratted him out, so he moved to Oregon. Ironically, he was actually found dead under mysterious circumstances himself. His death has been reported as an accidental carbon monoxide poisoning from fumes from a damaged car exhaust pipe, which sounds a little bit dodgy. And Sean Assell met with Gandhi sometime later when writing his book after contacted him via Facebook. When Assell arrived, the first thing Gandhi said was, "So, you want to know if I killed Liston?" After several hours of discussion, Gandhi said he didn't kill Liston, but he thinks that it was Earl Cage. So they all sort of, Gandhi and Peters and Resnick, they all sort of link in somewhere along the line, and whether, although you're looking at three different suspects, I mean, the possibility is that one of them, if not all of them, knew who and how Sonny Liston did eventually die.
So the last and final suspect is Dale Klein, aka James J. Wargick, who had been in and out of jail half his life and was actually on the FBI's most wanted list, and a fugitive who had been on the lam for 5 years after a Texas jailbreak. Also a mob hitman that admitted he helped kill Liston via an enforced heroin overdose, a popular mob execution technique. He is the only suspect that has actually admitted to the murder of Sonny Liston. He explained to his son, Greg Swarm, the role he played in both Liston's death and that of a showgirl who had wed a Texas oilman, depriving his family of a handsome inheritance, another enforced overdose. Klein had also told Greg of the existence of a movie script that would explain all. Now, following Klein's death in 1997, the son, Greg Swarm, flew to Los Angeles to retrieve his personal effects. He ran across the business card of a movie producer who turned out to be a mob insider connected to Sinatra. The producer insisted, "Let it lie. Too many people are still alive who won't want you to know about this. Your life will be in danger."
Well, incredible, isn't it? I mean, we've run through it. They are certain individuals that we believe were either involved or knew about the death of Sonny Liston, and was it an overdose or was he actually, did someone take his life with a shot of heroin? Now, for me, I mean, I will say straight up that for me, he was murdered. I honestly believe it. I think there's too much evidence to suggest that it was just a straight up suicide. And why would he sort of kill himself? It didn't quite make sense. In terms of who it was, I'm sort of tied with Warjack because he actually admitted it, or whether Resnick took out a contract and maybe asked someone to do it, or whether it was Gandhi. It's really troubling to think that so many people wanted Sonny Liston dead. It just doesn't make sense. But he was involved with some of the worst people around at the time. I really don't know.